reading this week had a lot of different tools we can use while we're meditating that I want to talk about a little bit. One is she calls mental noting, which is using a word to say what your thought is, what kind of thought. Okay, so when you're on your breath and you notice a thought, you just very briefly, lightly, try to say what that is. And I have a handout today that has a list of about 20 different kinds of thoughts that might be helpful for you in naming these. But usually, if you can just say if the thought is about the past or the future, that's helpful because we're trying to stay in the present. So past thoughts would be memory, what I was doing yesterday. Might get caught in reveries of a certain time or a scary time. Memories. Future would be planning. A lot of times we're sort of thinking what we're going to do next. I do a lot of rehearsing. What I'm going to say when I see somebody, or like for this class, I'm sitting in meditation. Okay, what am I going to say in class today? And that's normal. You just name it. Oh, rehearsing. Fine. I'll come to that again later and come back to the breath. So just those mental noting can be helpful. And don't overdo it. If you don't feel like mental noting, don't. And it's kind of funny. She says in there, some of the students like to chuckle at her, and she says, "Isn't mental noting just another kind of thinking?" Yes. But if it's helpful, it's okay to use.
Mindful, she'll repeat it. She'll say joy, joy.
Yeah.
Is that something that you recommend? Is do it twice?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then she gets into how much intensity you have. Jealousy. And she said, well, if you notice that, just try calm it down a little. Well, that's jealousy. No big deal. Yeah. There's another one we call feeling tone. And that is every thought, or especially emotion, tends to have either a good feeling, a bad feeling, or a neutral feeling. So if you notice a thought, perhaps a memory, okay, and you might just say, I don't like that. So in those cases, you may notice a little bit of what we call aversion, like you want to get away from it. Like the COVID. Oh, I don't like that. And it's not only the thought of I'm worrying about COVID, and then you notice also your reaction to it, that you want to get away from it. That's freedom. That says, oh, I don't have to be that way. I just want to be with it as it is. Or if there's something very pleasant, like you're anticipating your cocktail hour. And you think, oh, cocktail hour. And then you notice, oh, I like that. So that sometimes has a moment of clinging, like you want to stay with that thought because it's so cool, right? And you notice, oh, I'm clinging. For our practice, we learn to let it go. That doesn't mean we don't enjoy things, but we're not as attached to them, and we can be with each thing at the moment. So, for instance, even when you're at cocktail hour, sometimes you're thinking about, well, what kind of snack am I going to have, or what am I going to have for dinner, instead of focusing on the joy of the cocktail hour, right? So keep coming back to the moment and noticing those kind of what we call feeling tones. That is, clinging on to pleasant things, pushing away unpleasant things, or sometimes there's kind of a neutral feeling. And very often, kind of a neutral feeling is associated with just dulling out, like boredom, like you just don't want to deal with it. And just notice that too. There's so many levels to think about. So mental noting, feeling tone. Another one she went through is this acronym called RAIN, which is very valuable. And I have a long handout that I'll give you from one of my teachers that talks about RAIN. But essentially, the four things are recognition, right? Acceptance, investigation, and non-identification. So this is particularly valuable when we're dealing with negative emotions, anxiety, fear. And when we notice that, we may just want to take a moment to go through those steps. Okay? So let's say we're afraid of getting sick when we go out. All right? And we notice that. Okay? Okay, I've noticed that I'm afraid. And then the next step is acceptance. Okay, afraid, that's a normal emotion. I accept it. Okay? Investigation, the main element in that, I believe, is finding where in the body we feel it. Because almost all emotions have a corresponding body sensation. Fear, you may feel a tightness in the pit of your stomach, very common, or in the chest. Anxiety certainly is big in the chest. And how many people have I seen in the emergency room with chest pain? And we say, yeah, it was anxiety. It was a panic attack, right? All the tests were normal. And they said, yeah, I know that's what was happening. Or a clenching of the jaw or clenching in certain parts of the body. And so in that part, after we recognize the feeling, accept it, and then notice where it is in the body, just feeling that allows it to go, allows it to pass. And we just want to stay with that for a minute. And the fourth step, non-identification, is just saying to yourself, this is not all who I am. This is just a passing emotion, a passing thought. This does not define me, and I can let it go. Now, those four steps may happen simultaneously, but sometimes it's valuable to go through the RAIN thing and really notice what's going on.
So instead of, letting the thought go away, you're kind of getting into it more.
Right. One more thing I want to talk about that she mentioned here is about some of the things we were talking about earlier with our informal practice, and that is how we deal with things in daily life. And I like to think about reacting versus responding. So all of us have triggers. Something that really bothers us, and as soon as that happens, we're going to act on it, okay? Barking dogs bother me, okay? I'm on my walk, and a dog is barking at me, and I notice, oh, okay, let it go. And if we can come to that moment where we notice that something is triggering us, we have an opportunity to step back from that, not react, but respond, to take a few moments to think what would be the wise course of action. Like Sharon says in the book, her best definition of mindfulness was that fourth grader who said, mindfulness is not hitting that guy on the playground. And that's so valuable. We can use that all the time. And I have a handout about that today too, called The Pause, about how we can learn to stop, take a breath or three, how valuable that is. And sometimes, this often happens in social situations. You're with somebody who you don't agree with, and let's say you're pretty relaxed for one reason or another, and you want to say something right away, and so, or even, especially with your loved ones. I mean, it seems like we fight more with the people we love, don't we? And sometimes if you notice that, you may even want to leave the room. Say, excuse me, I just need to take a moment to compose myself, okay? Which is, hopefully they'll understand that. Or just take a moment to take a breath and notice what's going on so you can respond rather than react. We talked about in the first time about the reptilian brain. And that's that reacting part. Because in some, evolutionary wise, we had to be trained to react because danger happens and we have to react quickly. Fight, flight, or freeze response. Those responses are less valuable for most of us in this modern world. And that's why we're learning mindfulness so that we can respond rather than react.
I think our president is a perfect example of that, where he goes to Twitter right away, and I think a sensible person would think about it first before they open their mouth.
Some people like that about him. Yeah. He's genuine, I guess. I have a meditation. I wasn't sure today, but I want to hear Sharon's voice one of these times. I brought the CD that we could listen to her. I think I might save that for next time because a lot of people, their favorite practice is guided practice. Using another person's voice to guide them through rather than to be independent. Okay? That's why some of those apps that I've mentioned are very helpful. The websites or the things you can find from Sharon in the book is really good. And I think next week I'll play you one of those. But for now, we'll have some time to go through the handout. But for now, I'm going to just lead you through a little bit of thing that kind of goes through some of that process I was just describing. And this is something a teacher calls flexible awareness practice. Okay? So once again, we will find our posture. As always, we'll be firmly planted, our hands comfortable, our eyes closed or gently gazing down forward. And we begin after noticing the body, to notice each in and out breath. Rising and falling. We're going to try, when something draws our attention away from the anchor of our breath, to make this the object of our meditation. And then shift back to the anchor. Let's try focusing on sounds. You don't have to name the sounds or try to understand what they are. Just notice, hearing. Voices, clock ticking, computer running, the sound of our own breath, maybe ringing in our ears. And then come back to the breath. Let's rest again on our anchor, the breath. When a thought enters our mind, let's use that mental notice. What is it? Just notice that and just stay with that thought for a time. Is it in the past or the future? What's our reaction to it? Is it pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? And when we're ready, return to the breath. This can be a very relaxing kind of meditation. There's perhaps a little less effort than focusing so hard on the breath, but just whatever comes, let it come and notice it. You might think of it as broadening our attention. Instead of just a narrow focus on our breath, we're broadening out all these different things that to our mind and our attention. The environment around us and our internal environment. So really paying attention, we may notice it's really helter-skelter. We're going from sound to the breath to a thought to a reaction to the thought, a fear. We're going to planning. And so then now and then we remember, just come back to the breath, our anchor. Breath is always there. You may come to a point where you have an awareness of awareness. You're just noticing that you're noticing. How freeing that can be, to not be tied down by all these things that bring us back. What potential we have. Letting things go, letting it be, just being here and now.
Could I add one smell to the awareness?
Yes, indeed.
Am I the only one that is affected by this stuff that they spray in the room?
You're close to the infuser.
Sitting over there.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's right. All those body sensations. Right. Perhaps a breeze you feel. And it can all get so confusing. There's so much to notice. So it's all a learning process. We just keep paying attention.
This is helpful because when I lay in bed and do my meditation, usually both the dogs are laying in, and I find myself listening to their breathing as opposed to concentrating on my breathing. I'm like, no, no. I can concentrate on your breathing, not Lily's breathing.
In the week ahead, I will ask you to read the next part, which is week 4, loving kindness. In my book, it's 144 to 180. Sharon Salzberg is acknowledged as one of the leading teachers of loving kindness. She has another book, that Real Love, that she focuses on that. So that's why I want to save that loving kindness meditation. I'll let Sharon lead us through that next week. It's a little different thing. It's using words. And it's encouraging us. We talk about kindness and compassion toward ourselves as we're doing this. And it's also, in this process, we learn to have kindness and compassion for others. So I've got I think, some interesting handouts for you this week. Take one and pass it around, please. The first one is called My Favorite Thinking Hits. And I thought this would be helpful with your mental noting. It gives some examples of kinds of thoughts. Any of those thinking hits that you notice are some of your favorites?
The rehearsing, I'll kind of, what I want to say if I'm writing an email to someone. So I kind of put it together in my mind first before I send it.
It's a necessary skill. It's good. Let's see if we can put the lights back on. I think Victor turns them off out front. Perhaps. Okay, see if that is helpful for you. The next one, I will ask you to take your time at your leisure. It's a longer one. It's from one of my teachers put this together, and it's a little bit longer discussion on this practice of rain with a nice example in there. So for your reading pleasure in the coming week, see if that's helpful and keep it in your files. The third one I will want to read through with you. It is called The Pause. And that's a special practice of taking time, as I was mentioning, especially with our triggers, to step back, take a breath, notice what's going on so that we can respond rather than react. The pause is a way of slowing down. It is a way of having some space between what we hear, what we see, even what we think, and what we say. The pause is a time when we can really take in what's been said, how we are feeling, and the whole flavor of the moment. During the pause, we become aware of the body. We become aware of our feelings. We come home to being in the present, in the moment of this particular experience right now. Even as you are reading this, even as you're sitting here now, you can pause and simply notice, what position is this body in? How am I feeling right now? Notice if you have any tensions or any particular wandering thoughts. The essence of the pause is mindfulness. It is being aware. Would someone read the second paragraph?
I don't have my glasses on.
I just want a person reactions such as liking and disliking
or other emotions are very strong, we're not as aware of what is going on around us or of our own inner response. Pause is a time to be aware. But we also realize that to be aware in this way, we need to step out of whatever reaction has taken us over in that moment. Sometimes these reactions are obvious, such as strong anger. We pause, take some time. Most of us have heard the advice, when you are angry, count to 10 before you speak. It is like that. But such reactions also unfold and take us over when they're positive and feel good. You may not be in a reaction of excitement or enjoying something that moment, as someone said, but not just enjoying it in the moment. You may actually be moving into your own automated story, habitual and conditioned. It's as if there is a kind of a push that comes from your past, or that comes from some emotional motor that is ready to be turned on.
David, could you read the last one?
The pause lets us step out of that reaction and into this moment. We step into knowing the sensations of the body. We step into knowing the pleasant and unpleasant sensations as they arise, and the emotions and thoughts that never seem to rest. We are aware in this moment. This is the pause. One would say that practicing the pause is a kind of antidote or healing for the tendency to react so quickly that there is no awareness, no, just the conditioned reaction. Introducing the pause, we open to a fresh awareness, stepping into the moment in a new and clear way. This feels like coming home, like resting in the body. Ah, here I am. From there, we can speak, we can really listen, and we can come closer to knowing things as they are.
In the prison mindfulness class that I'm involved with, recently we're focusing on freedom. Can one be free while you're in prison? And can one be in a kind of prison when you're not in prison? And I like this about how so much of what we say and do is habitual and conditioned. It comes from our past. It's not really, we don't have freedom. We're just reacting. And if we can take the time to notice what's going on, we can really be free in the moment. Any issues or questions before we have our closing meditation? We have 2 more classes. You're doing great. You're coming every time. You're doing the stuff. I'm so pleased. It excites me to be with you. And we'll learn some new things the next couple of weeks and wrap things up. And I may have mentioned, if a few of you want to keep meeting, if you find this helpful with less structure, we could keep meeting. Good. We'll have a brief closing sit. Remember how I said sometimes just getting into that position puts you in a meditative stance right away, you know? Notice that. Take a minute to feel our body. this body, here in this place, here in this time, right now. What do we feel? What do we hear? What do we sense? And we bring our attention, as always, to our anchor, the breath, noticing each in and out breath, rising and falling. Not trying to control the breath, just noticing. And we notice all those other things floating through our mind like clouds. Thoughts, emotions. We notice them and we continue letting them go. Another analogy for the mind is like the ocean. On the surface, the ocean can be so changeable. Winds and waves and storms. Oh, so much activity on the surface of the ocean. But even just diving deep, just a few feet below the surface, is calm. All that activity we notice from the calmness of the deep. And we can just look up and see, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on up there, but here, my mind is calm. And we can go out into our week being mindful of all those little moments.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks.